Just a few years ago, the auto industry wasn't just struggling, it was flatlining. GM and Chrysler were on the verge of collapse. But we refused to throw in the towel and do nothing. We refused to let Detroit go bankrupt. I bet on American workers and American ingenuity, and 3 years later, that bet is paying off in a big way.
Well, that was a few weeks before Election Day 2012, and today the ruling came down that Detroit is eligible for Chapter 9 bankruptcy. This was today in the White House briefing room.
And I thought in the campaign he said it would be horrible for Detroit to go bankrupt.
Well, I think that there is enormous hardship caused by some of the problems that have happened in Detroit, which is why this needs to be resolved between the city and its creditors. Our position on this is the same as it was prior to the judge's ruling and prior to, or in the immediate aftermath of the declaration of bankruptcy.
And we're back with the panel. Charles.
Look, I don't ordinarily defend the president, but clearly what he meant by Detroit was a shorthand for the auto industry. He was not referring to Detroit, the city. I think there is no way in which he's going to engineer a bailout of Detroit, at least any one that can be seen. Perhaps there can be ways that he can transfer money that'll be less visible. But look, this is an issue that Detroit's going to have to settle. It owes $18 billion, which it cannot pay. Michael Barone was once asked why he went from being a liberal to a conservative, and he had a one-word answer: Detroit. He grew up in Detroit. 50 years of liberal governance utterly ruined it, in addition to outright theft and fraud. And this is the legacy. The unions are going to try to put a monkey wrench in this, to try to slow it down and launch appeals on this, but in the end it's not going to work. Unfortunately, the pensioners are going to be hurt, as will all the other creditors, and Detroit's going to have a second chance. Otherwise, it has no chance whatsoever.
Mark?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. You know, bankruptcy is a managed way to handle debts that you can't pay. And that's kind of what Mitt Romney was saying when he said that the auto company should go through some kind of a bankruptcy procedure. And of course, somebody put a big headline on his op-ed, "Let Detroit go bankrupt," or "Let General Motors go bankrupt." And that gave candidate Obama a pretty great opening, and it all seems pretty ironic today. But I do agree with Charles. This is the only option for this city that's come to this sad state of affairs.
Of course, General Motors did go bankrupt. It was just a rigged bankrupt run for the United Auto Workers. A few months ago, I was in Detroit, and I spent some time with the governor. That day, he had been out with a cleanup crew to clean up a park in one of this vast swath of the abandoned part of the city. He said they got to the park, and the grass and weeds and bushes were so high you couldn't tell what was in the park. He said, well, we found some tires, a boat in the middle of the city, and a body. One hopes the body was found before the packs of feral dogs in Detroit had got to it. I mention this because this isn't like Orange County, California goes bankrupt. Jefferson County, which is Birmingham, Alabama, goes bankrupt because they made bad investment decisions. Detroit doesn't have an economic problem. It's got that, of course, but it has cultural collapse. And nothing a bankruptcy court can do is going to change that.
So what about this White House, what it's saying and doing?
I'd like to see them try and get a bailout for a blue city ruined by one-party Democratic rule through Congress.
Absolutely. There's going to be no attempt. Carney had an opportunity to actually say the federal government's going to help, and he stayed way away from that. Look, Obama said, I'm going to spend the next 3 years of my administration, if I have to, defending Obamacare. He doesn't have any political capital left over for anything, especially the bailout of a democratic city.
Do you think there was ever an effort in the works, Mara, to work something up to help in Detroit in any way?
No, I do not. I do not. I think this is seen as the best, most orderly way that Detroit can kind of get back on its feet slowly.
For all the pre-election talk about where we were pre-election.
Well, he feels he saved the auto industry. That's quite different than bailing out an entire bankrupt city.
At least we have provisions in the law for municipal bankruptcies. There's nothing in the law of the United States that allows for the bankruptcy of a state. So watch Illinois, which is in worse shape financially than any other state.
That is it for the panel. Let's